All right, let me just count to 10 in my head.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us here on Ask Autoline. I'm John McElroy. Today, we want to talk about the cold, hard reality of why Ford is cutting its passenger cars. Here's some of my insights. I'll talk for a couple of minutes. We'll open it up to your questions and see where it all goes. Number one, let's go back over the last 30 years. The Ford Motor Company, as well as General Motors and Chrysler, destroyed billions of dollars in capital and shareholder value. They invested in a lot of products that never made any kind of return whatsoever. Those days are quickly coming to an end. In fact, they may even be over right now. None of these car companies are going to invest in products where they cannot make a profit or cover the cost of their capital. You know, they don't just pull the money out of their pockets to come out with these cars. They go out and borrow it. They have to pay the banks and other lending institutions interest on that. That's what they mean by the cost of capital. You've got to add that on to everything else that you're investing. This is a key reason why the Detroit Three went bankrupt. Okay, Ford didn't go bankrupt, but it went out and borrowed the money, but it was in financial trouble too. It's also a key reason why Ford stock has gone nowhere. It's trading at $11 right now. It only has a price to earning ratios of about 6. That is, the market will pay Ford 6 times what its earnings are. That's how you come up with the stock price, which I said is now $11. But if you look at the S&P average, the price to earning ratio is 24. So if Ford could just get to the average where the rest of the market is, its stock price wouldn't be $11, it'd be $44. And that's clearly what they're aiming at. Remember now, too, we're entering a new era where the company's going to have to invest billions in electric cars, and it's not going to make much of a return on those products, not for another decade in my estimation, but it has to do it anyway. That's what the law says, whether it's here in the US, in China, or in Europe, you have to come out with these products. We're also moving into a world of mobility where Uber and Lyft and Maven just in the US, or Didi in China, or Ola in India, or GetCar and BlaBlaCar in Europe are starting to encroach on traditional means of transportation. And in the US, certainly, a smaller percentage of people are buying new cars. The car sales should be a whole lot higher compared to what people bought in the year 2000, but a smaller percentage of the population is buying a new car. We could even be at the end of ownership or seeing the end of ownership of cars, and automakers have got a plan for this new future reality. And let's talk about passenger cars for a moment. Most of what Ford is shifting over to are crossover utility vehicles. And what are they? They're built on passenger car platforms. They have passenger car powertrains. They have passenger car interiors. They're just passenger cars with a different body style on them. That's where the market is going. And besides, let's not forget, station wagons pretty much went away over the last 30 years. Yeah, there's a few out there, but not many. Convertibles have largely gone away. There's a few out there, but not many. And two-door coupes pretty much don't exist in the market anymore. There are a few, but let's face reality. The market is shifting. This is why Ford is shifting too. And besides, it's not just going to be Ford. The Lincoln brand, I'm sure, is going to announce in the not too distant future that it's dropping the MKZ and that it will not reinvest in a replacement for the Continental. Anyway, that's why I think Ford is cutting out its passenger cars. Let's get to some of the questions coming in. Okay, Kate Kirk is saying, how's Ford doing in China? It's doing okay. It should be growing faster. Lincoln is the real brand that's growing over there for Ford, but a lot more should be going on than just what Ford's been able to do in China, because the Chinese market is growing faster than what Ford's been doing. 2017 was a bit of a struggle for Ford there. Like other places, it just doesn't have enough crossovers. Okay, Frank Reed wrote in to say he thinks the reason Ford cars don't sell well is they don't keep them updated. Compare the current Fusion with the previous Accord or Camry and it's miles behind. You're absolutely right. It comes back down to Ford not having the money to invest in these cars because it's got to invest them elsewhere. Chet wrote in to say, will Ford lose much overall market share over the next 2 to 5 years, and will Wall Street punish them for that? You bet Ford's going to lose market share, eliminating all those cars. In fact, I believe that Toyota is going to permanently surpass Ford in the U.S. market, and Toyota is going to become number 2. In fact, if you take out all of Ford's car sales, just the Ford brand sales that they're getting rid of, FCA will pass Ford to become the number 3 automaker. Ford's probably going to drop to number 4 in the market. And Wall Street will actually reward Ford for doing that if it delivers on the kind of profitability that it's talking about. Lexus Fan 100 says, I think it's good Ford's getting rid of the cars, but the Fusion's very important and handsome and a strong car. Keeping Fusion is important. Well, I understand where you're coming from with that comment, but the Fusion is going away. Joe Pastor says, morning, John. Question is, how long before all OEMs, including Honda and Toyota, stop selling sedans in North America? I think that's going to be a long time. I don't see Honda and Toyota going away from that. It's still a strong segment. You know, we do point out, however, that sales of the all-new Honda Accord are down 20%. So that tells you that even some of the well-established automakers like Honda, who have been very strong in sedans, are finding that it's starting to be a struggle. Like I said, you know, even though so many automakers have cut back on station wagons and convertibles and two-door coupes, they haven't gone away. It's just that they're not going to invest in that many of them. Okay, Wiley 4x4 says, what will be the entry vehicle for Ford and at what price point? Very good question. Right now, the entry-level vehicle is going to be the Ford EcoSport. It's about a $20,000 vehicle. Listen to what Ford is saying, though. It's going to start doing deals with Mahindra out of India. It says it's very open to looking at doing deals with other companies, maybe buying some stuff. So I think we're going to start to see lower-priced cars coming from automakers like Mahindra that Ford's going to have build it for them. Phantom Tuba says, does the volume of HRV sales make up for the drop in the Accord? Good question. I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but I can assure you of one thing. Honda did not plan on having Accord sales go down. That's why it invested a lot of money in an all-new version. Nathan Berliner says, once Ford accesses most of their lineup, do you think people will buy the trucks with the hybrid engine, or will there be too much of a brand hit with the cuts? We're going to have to see of how that all goes. I think that there will be customers for hybrid versions of CUVs, SUVs, and even pickup trucks. I don't think the numbers are going to be that big, but if there ever is a gas spike in prices, then people will turn even more to hybrids. And let's see, Guess 123 says, cars are too expensive anymore, not to mention insurance. They can't even get an infotainment system for people like me. You're right, they're expensive. This is why a smaller percentage of the population is buying new cars, and they're going to used cars instead. And in fact, right now we have a flood of used cars coming back into the market, coming off lease. And these are pretty modern vehicles. They've got Bluetooth connectivity. They've got Wi-Fi hotspots. They've got all the latest safety technology. And increasingly, they tend to be crossovers, SUVs, and trucks. So I think those vehicles are going to entice even more people to move away from the new car market. And let's see, Stephen wants to know, when will all cars look like the toasters in the future? A lot of them are. You know, once we go to autonomous vehicles where you can do whatever you want inside of a vehicle, I think more and more those kinds of cars are going to look like vans. You're going to want the maximum space possible inside of a car. And what gives you the maximum space? A box, a one-box design like most vans offer right now. So unfortunately, I think you're right. They are going to have a similar silhouette. However, this is going to be the challenge for designers to come up with toasters on wheels, like you call them, but that have some element of design that really distinguishes them from one another. Lexus Fan 100's back. Will you bring Ford CEO to Autoline after hours and ask some scrutinizing questions with these questions? We would love to get Jim Hackett in the studio here, or Jim Farley, or any of the other top executives at Ford. The ask is in. We'll see if Ford delivers on them for us. Let's see. We have another question here. Jonathan Brown, will Ford car sales plummet now that Ford made this announcement? Yeah, they'll start to go down almost instantaneously, Jonathan. You know, we here who love cars and follow the automotive industry, including all of you watching this segment right now, are very aware of what Ford's doing. But you know what? For a lot of the public out there, they don't even know that this is going on. So I think those car sales will do pretty good. And besides, people are going to be running out looking for great deals on those Fiestas and Focuses and Fusions and Tauruses. So I wouldn't be surprised to see sales bump up a little bit right now as people run out to try to get deals and get the last ones before they go away. Phantom Tube is back saying Civic Accord generations are typically 5 to 6 years. Will they now turn into 7+ years to keep development costs down if sedan sales are low? I don't think so, because look at what Ford did. It left those cars in the market to try to get a return on the investment, and the sales just started dropping. If you don't refresh designs, sales start to go down. So I don't see Toyota or Honda or any of the others sticking with cars, starting to leave them in the market longer. They're going to have to keep them refreshed. Mars Motion says, what happens if oil goes up for some geopolitical reason? That's what a lot of people are worried about. What if there's another spike in gasoline prices? Ford says what it's going to do is offer hybrid and plug-in versions of these cars. It points out that by 2022 or thereabouts, it's going to have 16 battery electric models on the market. So that's going to be their hedge against higher oil prices. And while prices are going up a little bit right now, remember, fracking is a game changer. It has totally changed the oil business. I think it's highly unlikely we're going to see massive spikes in oil prices like we commonly saw in the past. Those days are over. In fact, there's new fracking techniques coming that could even open up more oil and shale reserves. And that would tend to say that we're just not going to see spikes in oil prices going forward. Kirk is back. Will Sandy do Ford a GT teardown? Nah, I don't think he's going to do the GT teardown. Sandy's going to do teardowns where he can make a lot of money selling his reports. And right now, Tesla's Model 3 is the hottest thing going. That's why he tore that one down. Toyota 2.0 says, what's going to happen with the Mazda 6? Yeah, I don't know if Mazda's going to stick with a sedan or if it's just going to throw in the towel like Ford has. Mazda is going to look at global markets, though, not just the U.S. market before it makes any decision. But I do believe we are going to see other automakers start to reduce their investment in traditional passenger sedans because this slowdown in sales of those kinds of vehicles is a global phenomenon. China is going hog crazy over CUVs and SUVs, and that's where the real writing is on the wall. Let's see, Mars Motion adds, and Asian cars will be much cheaper. They could be. Manufacturing costs are going up in Asia, too. Talus 84 says, this seems short-sighted to me, just like the Ranger, people did not move up into the F-150, but moved over to Toyota. With these cars going away, people will not move up into CUVs, but move Asian cars. You're right. That will happen in a lot of cases. But it gets back to what I said at the very beginning of this segment. Ford and any other automaker can no longer afford to invest billions of dollars in refreshing these cars and never make a return on that money. That money has gone away. No one's going to lend Ford Motor Company money if it does not get a return on it. Let's see, Dan Thompson says, could this be a move to prepare for a partnership or a merger with another OEM that perhaps has a better sedan portfolio but could benefit from Ford's truck mix? I don't think we're going to see a merger. What Ford has said is it's willing to buy stuff from other companies. It's willing to do joint ventures with them, some other kinds of partnerships, but not a merger, not like a Daimler Chrysler or a Fiat Chrysler kind of thing. I don't think that's in the cards, at least not at this snapshot in time. Mars Motion says, look at the proliferation of compact cars in cities. Very true. I mean, how many different models of cars does society really need? Not as many as we've got today. Jason, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, wants to know, will Ford continue to sell performance vehicles, or will they eventually go away? No, it's going to keep with performance. Every automaker knows if you do a performance variant of a vehicle, you can get 10 to 15% more money for that vehicle. You can charge more money for it. This is why they're all doing performance lines these days, because they tend to be a lot more profitable. Lexus Fan 100's back. So is Ford canceling production of sedans in the U.S. or across the globe? Great point. I'm glad that you asked that. No, it's only for the U.S. market right now. In fact, they just introduced the all-new Ford Focus in Europe. They announced the Focus variant, the Focus Active, that they're going to build in China. They're going to continue selling and building these vehicles in Latin America. Right now, we're only talking about Ford getting rid of most of its passenger cars in the U.S. market. And again, because sales are going down there. And the real rule of thumb is going to come down to making money. If Ford sees that a passenger car is profitable, including covering its cost of capital, it will continue to invest in that product. And that's going to be the cut line. If it cannot cover its cost of capital, if it is not profitable or barely profitable, it's going to get the axe. Crozium says, hi, John, any info on Ford's timeline phasing out those passenger cars? I think they'll be gone in the next 2 years. I mean, it's not going to take Ford long to be doing this. And remember, most of the things that Ford's doing, it's already announced of how it's going to fill those plants with crossovers or sport utility vehicles. So, for example, in Wayne, Michigan, Ford was building the Focus and the C-Max. The Focus is going to China. The C-Max is getting axed. But the new Ford Ranger is going in that plant, and so is the Ford Bronco. Bryant Monroe says, how about Lincoln and the Continental and MKZ? Will they go away as well? There was talk about a Lincoln Continental return to suicide doors. Is that true? Does that make any sense? Well, my prediction is the MKZ is going to go away as soon as the Fusion goes away. They're built in the same plant. Ford has said that it's going to take the production out of that plant and put crossovers in instead. And I think that's the answer right there. The MKZ is probably going to go away unless they choose to make it in China and maybe import it from there. And I do believe the Continental will come out with suicide doors. I believe all the planning is in line for that. But when it comes time at the end of the Continental's product cycle life, will Ford invest another $1 billion to replace it? I don't think so. And again, that's where it's all going to come down to. Where can you invest $1 billion and make a good return? I don't see the Continental offering that kind of investment. Mars Motion back, are they seeing autonomous affecting car sales in the future? Yeah, I really think that the Ford Motor Company and General Motors and everybody else recognizes that the next decade, the 2020s, are going to be massively disruptive for the auto industry with autonomous cars and especially mobility services. And that's why a lot of people in the industry are talking about maybe the public is going to stop buying cars and start buying their mobility instead. And if that's the case, we may not need as many cars in the future. Steven says, do you have news on Ford buying multiple properties in Corktown? All I can do is direct you to the Detroit News, I think, or maybe it was the Detroit Free Press. They've got a big story on that this morning. Ford is investing a lot of money in downtown Detroit, and it's all about attracting new young talent. Downtown Detroit is red hot right now. The Corktown area of the city where Ford is investing is red hot. This is the fastest way, the best way to get young people to want to locate to Detroit to work for a car company, set up their offices or their work areas in a really cool part of the city. Geshet 123 says, cars sit too low for people anymore. They want all-wheel drive and easy access, not to sit on the ground with slightly better MPG. Great point. I think I would agree exactly with what you're saying. Garrett, I would only butcher your name. Chesney? I'm trying here, man. Any idea when the Skyactiv X engine is coming out? Looking at the 2018 Mazda 6 and want to know if I should buy the 2.5-liter turbo or just lease it if Skyactiv is coming soon. I think that Skyactiv engine is going to be coming. Boy, I would hold off. If you need a car right now, get a short lease. But I think that Skyactiv engine, which is sort of a pseudo HCCI, homogeneous charged combustion engine, where a gasoline engine kind of acts like a diesel, it could be a game changer. That could be a really cool engine to have. Mike M says, what's going to happen to Fusion police hybrid vehicles, such as those in Los Angeles? I think you're going to see some sort of Ford Escape hybrid that maybe will replace them, maybe a Ford Expedition or Explorer hybrid that the police will go for. But like I said, Ford's going to offer hybrid versions, including plug-in variants of all these SUVs and crossovers. Dan Thompson said, I only heard about Ford sedans cars being cut out. Can we assume that the Lincoln equivalent vehicles will also get axed? Yeah, we've talked about that already, and I believe those cars will get axed as well. Let's see. Rick Byer says, what companies use the battery for stop-start technology but are not PHEV? Man, the list goes on. It's too long to list. 48-volt hybrids, mild hybrids with stop-start are going to become the rage. In fact, most of FCA's truck products, including the Ram pickups, including most Jeep products, are going to become 48-volt hybrids. I think we're going to see this go almost across the board. Irvinzo says, hola, hey. Okay, I guess that's a comment, not a question. Nathan Berliner says, what's been the reaction from the UAW about the Ford news? Good question. It's actually been very muted. We haven't heard anything coming out of the UAW. And I think that's because Ford told the union, look, no one's going to lose their job in the plants over this. You know, I talked about the Ford Wayne plant being retooled from cars to crossovers and SUVs. The only passenger car after that made in the United States is the Ford Taurus, which is made at the Chicago plant. They're going to put more crossovers and SUVs in that plant. So as long as the UAW realizes no one on the line is going to lose their job, they're not going to complain too much about this move. Tiona Cho says, this is tragic. So much history lost forever. What a waste. That's a very common feeling out there. People are not comfortable with this move. They do not like seeing these passenger cars go away. So I understand what you're talking about, but man, like I said at the beginning of the segment, Ford can no car company can afford to invest in products that will not provide a return on that money. You can no longer just incinerate capital and destroy shareholder value. Lexus fan back again. All right. So GM will also cut its sedans, Impala, Malibu, Caddy, ATS, CTS, Buick. Wow, GM has too many sedans. I think you're right. I don't think GM is going to get out of cars as fast as Ford has, because I think GM is making money on more of its vehicles than Ford did. But I think you're on the right track. I think you're not going to see GM going forward investing in passenger sedans as it has in the past. Nike HM69 says, is it possible that this is just Ford's way of moving manufacturing overseas with less of a political firestorm? They can always reintroduce those cars later. I don't see it that way. I mean, like I said, they're not moving manufacturing overseas with the exception of the focus going to China. Like I said, they're going to retool those plants and build CUVs, SUVs, and pickups in them instead of passenger cars. So all they're doing is changing what those plants make. They are not getting rid of those plants. Mars Motion says another factor might be higher interest rates and tougher financing conditions, but that may reverse. Well, yeah, not so much. Again, they're still making vehicles and selling vehicles. They're just not going to be a traditional 3-box sedan. Talus84 says, totally agree. Skyactiv X is a total game changer. Love the engineering it took to make it work. Dan Sanger says, if Ford's BEV sales, battery electric vehicles, start to take off, will they have a battery supplier who can keep up with the volume? That's a very good question. I think we could be headed towards a battery shortage in another 4 to 5 years if battery electric sales really take off. I'm sure Ford has contingency plans for that, but let's see what happens with those sales. Phantom Tuba says, I think the Accord would sell more if it offered all-wheel drive, but it would cut into the CRV and the TLX series. I'm not so sure I agree. I think that all-wheel drive take rate on an Accord might be 3 to 5%. I don't think it would move sales all that much. Let's see here. Mars Motion said, would love to see an efficient Jeep. That would be a blockbuster. Look, I've driven the 2-liter turbo mild hybrid. It's faster than the V6, and it gets better fuel economy. And because of that, I think that is going to be the future. Now, when you say super efficient, it's a more efficient Jeep, but I wouldn't call it necessarily super efficient. Jeffrey Rainey says, isn't it interesting how FCA was slammed for not having any credible passenger cars, yet they're catering to what people are buying new? Well, they do have ways of refreshing the Chrysler 300, the Dodge Charger, and the Challenger. Look, this is what the Hellcat's been all about. This is what the Demon is all about. This is what the Mopar packages for those cars are about. Having said that, there is replacements coming for those cars. Next year, I believe late 2019, FCA is going to come out with a new platform using an existing platform, but put those cars on a new platform. And it will invest in those cars because it can make good money on them. And like I said, it's not just getting rid of a traditional 3-box design because it's a traditional 3-box design. The criteria is, can you make money on it? Can you invest $1 billion in a car like that and make a good return? And if you can, you will make that kind of investment. Paulo Uloa says, hi, why are sedans not profitable? Didn't they used to be? Yeah, but the market has shifted. And we have never seen a shift in the marketplace like we are seeing right now. This has never happened before. But just to give you some numbers, in 2016 and 2017, in the US market, sales of traditional passenger cars dropped by 1.4 million cars. That's a huge drop. And all those buyers shifted over to CUVs and SUVs and pickups. And we're continuing to see that shift. And that's why we're having this discussion today. Let's see. Austin Holzman says, has it become cost effective for GM to start using carbon fiber composite for full body going forward in the future? Lighter weight, increased range for EV. Look, they're experimenting with it right now. That's what this carbon fiber box in the new GMC Sierra is all about. Can you do this in high volume production and still get the quality that you want and get the first time through so you're not scrapping a lot of these things in the production process? To go to a full body, that's an expensive proposition. Now you're getting into tooling costs that can be very expensive. And but having said all that, I believe that GM is experimenting with this to see, do customers want it? Because remember, it's an option. You're going to have to pay more for it. And how does it hold up in the marketplace? And are customers satisfied with this? If all that looks good, you're going to see a lot more carbon fiber being used in the industry. Paolo is back. Oh, no, I already answered that one. Carl Darl says, maybe Ford needs to come out with a sexy electric vehicle. They got one coming. I believe it's either the end of 2019 or early 2020. They've got a crossover coming that, as they've already announced themselves, is very much inspired by the Mustang. They're going to call it the Mach 1. It will be a 4-seater, high-performance battery electric vehicle. So sit tight. It is on the way. Claymore XI says, people can be upset about these models going away, but how many of those are ready to run out and buy one? Great point. I was very curious to see how sales for these models fare over the next few months. We talked about that. Maybe some people will run out to get a great deal on them, or maybe sales will go down, but we'll watch and see what happens. Jeffrey Rainey says, have we been here before when the minivan ate into station wagon sales? Is this just a continuation of the early days of the hardcore sport utes in the 1990s? I think you're making a great point. Market tastes change. They change over time. Station wagons were very popular. Now they're barely around. Minivans used to be extraordinarily popular. Now they're way down from what they used to be. Convertibles used to be very popular. Now they're hard to find. Two-door coupes used to be popular. Now they're hard to find. And now we're seeing the three-door or the three-box passenger sedan going by the wayside. Scott C says, Lincoln should build a town car on the Aviator platform. I love what you're saying, Scott. I love your idea. I think it should be hand-built. I think it should be really expensive, like $300,000 expensive in very limited volume, and really make a halo car. But I love your comment there. Andy G says, is it okay for Ford not to have car models in the U.S. below 20 grand? Southeast Asia will follow. Only Ford car by 2019 might just be the Mustang. Yeah, Ford does need entry levels, but I don't believe they're going to build them themselves. Listen to what they're saying about working with Mahindra in India. I think that's where Ford's going to get its entry level cars. So let's see. Phantom Tuba is back. What do you think the take rate is on the all-wheel drive Altima? I don't know that offhand. I'll have to look that up. My guess is it's very, very low. Let's see. Lexus Fan 100 is back. John, what do you think of those decisions? Was this to cancel sedans at Ford? Was it CEO or ex-CEO or investors or someone else? No, it's the new CEO, Jim Hackett. This guy was brought in to make a change at the Ford Motor Company. Its earnings have been weak. Its stock is going nowhere. This is why they pushed out Mark Fields as CEO. They want the new CEO to make changes, drastic changes to the company. So yeah, you bet. He did not make this decision in a vacuum. They talked it over a lot, but you can be sure that Jim Hackett was at the center of this decision. Greg H says, super program. Thank you for that comment. We really like hearing that. Karaga One says, the Camry is no longer a grandma automobile. Hey, that's right. You know, Toyota put sexiness and performance back into the Camry, and it's working for them. James Steed says, is the new Focus RS coming to the U.S.? I don't think so. I think with the Focus going away, that's probably the death knell of the Focus RS and the ST, obviously, in the American market. Mars Motion back. Could a company like Local Motors make passenger car niche profitable if they really got new manufacturing going strong? Overall, it does seem like customer preference shifting, or it does seem like that. Hey, Ford says it's open to doing business with anybody if it makes business sense. I don't think Local Motors is ready for that yet, but going forward in the future, it's a possibility. Bob Naraudo 123 says, what do you think about the lack of extended range EVs with a small gas engine in the market? I think there's huge potential market for them with range anxiety of normal EVs. I think you're right. I think that's a lot of the thinking that going forward, plug-in hybrids, i.e. battery electrics with a range extender, is what most people are going to settle on. I think you're right with that. Let's see, Smack 1978 says, thought MPG for the government regs was based on the fleet average. Are the Ranger and the Bronco going to be that efficient? They changed how they measure fuel economy, and they've gone to different categories of cars that measures their footprint, essentially the wheelbase times the track of the vehicle. So you don't need the fleet average that you did in the past. If you did, Ford would have to keep those cars to average it all out. But they've changed the way that they measure fuel economy by company, and it's by these footprint categories. So great question there. Let's see. Centurion 1973 says, since CUVs and SUVs are generally more expensive vehicles, can this cause another crisis when the next recession hits and people pull back on spending and banks limit loans? Well, everyone takes a hit when there's a recession and people do cut back. So the key is not having a bunch of vehicles in your portfolio mix that do not make a profit. That's really what this discussion is all about. And it's a sea change in the industry. In the past, car companies could afford to have a few losers as long as they were profitable overall. That's not good enough in these days. And see, you risk having activist investors try to take over your company. General Motors already faced this. Ford, while it's protected more by the family owning and controlling so much of the stock, is also vulnerable to activist investors demanding a change. That's part of what this decision's about, too. Let's see. Jeffrey Rainey is back. What is the point of the new GMC T4 package? Doesn't everyone already recognize them as a serious truck brand? It's all about making more money. You know, GMC has done a terrific job with the Denali brand. It's unbelievable the kind of money that they're getting with that. So adding the T4 is just about trying to figure out how do you get even more money from customers. Daniel Quesada asks, isn't that expensive to bring the Focus ST from Europe? It is. There's no question. But remember, if Ford of Europe can sell more STs, the price for Ford of Europe goes down. But like I said before, my guess is the Focus ST is probably not long for the American market. We'll have to wait and see what Ford officially announces. My gut feel is it's probably gone. Lexus Fan 100, just wondering how the reliability, dependability of Ford products in general, also sedans is. Ford does generally pretty good. I mean, they're right in the middle of the market by most of the quality ratings, and they got some pretty good competition in the middle of the market right there. Remog says, when you guys review the Honda Insight, you better say, here's our Autoline Insight. You guys are hilarious. Phantom Tuba is back. With crossovers being higher in the air and less aerodynamic, wouldn't it be harder to meet the federal fuel economy standards? Not really. Look, most CUVs are only a mile or two per gallon different with the same engine, powertrain, and the like. You used to pay a big penalty going for fuel economy penalty going with a crossover or an SUV. These days, they've really closed the gap. You are right. They tend to be a little bit heavier. They're not as aerodynamic. You do lose some efficiency. But I think when the general public gets in a crossover that gets around 30 miles to the gallon, even on the highway, they go, boom, 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 that's good enough for me, and they're on their way. Scott C. says, I live in Vegas, and Nissan is dominating the market here. The Japanese and Koreans are flooding this place. I'm wondering if the big three will do anything about it. FCA is doing something about it. Well, Scott, I can tell you, in Vegas, you see a lot of rental cars, a lot of them. And Nissan is dumping all kinds of cars into the rental market right now. That may be a reason why you're seeing so many Nissans in Vegas. Where are we here? Okay, Andy G says, Toyota plans to build the 2019 Corolla sedan in the U.S. I guess sedans are not dead till Toyota stops making them. Yeah, I'm not convinced that Toyota makes money or covers its cost of capital, but the company is so profitable overall. And with Ford getting out of the business, Toyota's got to be rubbing its hands in glee because it will sell more Corollas as a result of that. And Phantom Tuba is back. As long as rideshare drivers use Corollas, they won't go away. Good point. Mars Motion says, great stream, very good show, impressive knowledge shown here. Hey, I'm kind of liking this comment. I tune in partially to understand economic trends overall. Thanks. And let's see. Will the Impala live on due to Toyota coming out with a new Avalon? My guess is the Impala will not get refreshed. Sales of the biggest sedans, Taurus, Impala, and the like, kind of weak right now. That segment is really shrinking. My guess is the Impala, there will not be a new Impala, maybe a refreshed one, but they're not going to come out with a total redesign. And let's see, Ben Adkin says, do you think the new design of the 2019 Toyota RAV4 will dominate the market even more than it already is? You bet. I think that new RAV4 is going to do terrific. And Toyota predicted a year, 2 years ago that the RAV4 would become its best-selling model because it saw the trend lines. Passenger car sales are going down. Lexus fan 100 back. I think all manufacturers should keep one sedan, Toyota with its Camry, Honda with its Accord, Nissan Altima, etc. So Ford should keep the Fusion. Not a bad thought, but I think Ford has made its decision and the Fusion is going away. Let's see. Claymore XL says, since we seem to see more cooperation between Asian automakers like Toyota and Mazda, do you think the big three might start doing the same for survival? I think that's a great point. Sergio Marchionne at FCA has already called for that. He wanted General Motors and FCA to merge. GM brushed him aside. Ford didn't even want to talk to him. He can't get Volkswagen to go with him. Maybe he'll go with the Chinese. But I think there's a real opportunity, going back to your point, for the Detroit Three to combine all or most of their powertrain operations. I mean, I should dig up the numbers, and I'll do this for something on Autoline. Look at all the 2-liter engines that GM makes. Look at all the 2-liter engines that Ford makes. Look at all the 2-liter engines that FCA makes. Why don't they all just get together and decide to build one 2-liter engine? They would save a fortune. And they could do the same with other engines that are the same displacement, and they could do the same with transmissions. Ford and GM have already done some work together on transmissions. Why not go all in and just combine all powertrain operations? They could save billions of dollars as a result. Let's see. Nadstar 43-2011 says, how long till we see transport as a service fully take hold in the U.S. and European markets? Fully take hold, I'm not sure when that will happen, if it ever happens. I think private ownership will never go away. Some people just aren't going to want to share. They're going to want to have their own cars. But to answer your question, I think in the coming decade, boy, we're going to see an explosion of ride sharing. I think we'll start to see the impact by 2025, and by 2030, it's going to be very, very noticeable. Smack 1978 says, do you think the Acadi's engine will find its way into the Mustang? Probably not the Mustang, but I do see it going into a pickup truck. I think that's the logical application for the engine. Remog says, how has the stock market reacted to Ford's announcement of cutting? The stock went up a little bit at Ford. But look, the investors are going to start to look for the stuff really happening. Right now, it's still just talk. Ford hasn't made any move. And the market's not going to invest solely on talk. It's going to want to see action. But I think the stock will move once Ford starts to act. We're going to get down to the end here, but when is Ford canceling its sedans? Yeah, I think by 2020, they'll be gone. HipTech says, no, John, no one's talking about the removal of the tint ban from windshields. You're the only person who can find out why. Could you please look into this? Great question. I had not noticed, HipTech. I will look into this. Phantom Tuba, how can Chrysler brand survive with just the 300 and the Pacifica? Oh, yeah. No, do you think they should or will badge engineer Jeep crossovers? Great question. No, and there is no question whatsoever. The Chrysler brand desperately needs more products. I do not know what those plans are right now, except that there is probably going to be variants of the 300. Bob Naraudo 123 says, what % of sales will hybrids be when Ford hybridizes their fleet? It's going to jump. Right now, hybrids are about 2% of the market. I'm just talking strong hybrids, like the Prius kind of hybrid. I think once these things start to go across the board in very short order, we could see it jump to about 8% of the market, because these are going to be hybrids that people are just going to get. They will not be sold separately as a hybrid. You're only going to be able to get it as a hybrid. So I think we'll start to see in very short order in the next 4 to 5 years that hybrids will go from around 2% of sales, maybe up to around 8%. We'll see where it goes after that. Jeffrey Rainey says, What was the niche that the Ford Flex tried to fill when it came out? Was it just a lever way of saying traditional family station wagon? Absolutely right. That's what it was, is a station wagon. Sales are really not that good. That's another vehicle that's going to get axed by Ford because it just barely sells. Scott C says, any more news on Johan, the ex-VP of Cadillac? No more news. I'm sure he's probably looking for another job. We'll see where he lands. I'll bet he does get back into the industry. Let's see. Scott C says he loves his CTS wagon. You got a collector's item there, brother. Lexus Fan 100 says, so how will the dealerships react to Ford canceling its sedan? Their hair is on fire. They don't want to see sales go down. They're very worried about Ford's move. Andy G says, should Ford make the active crossover versions of its car globally? I think you're going to see that, Andy. I think this was a redesign for the Fusion. And yeah, I do believe that you are going to see that vehicle be sold around the world because that's where the market is going. Hey, I'm going to wrap up here. And remember, you can always check out our website, www.autoline.tv, for more of our content. And in fact, in the next 10 minutes or so, if it's not up already, Autoline Daily is going to be out. Check that out. But thanks so much for tuning in to Ask Autoline. I'm John McElroy. Thanks for your patience and for all your questions.